Well, I just woke up spontaneously, like always, but a little bit later than normal. It's a little after 8 in the morning. Normally I've been waking up between 6 and 7 regularly, but last night I stayed up past midnight. There's been some leaking in the roof because there's an incredible amount of rain, like I've been talking about for the past week, almost. It's basically almost all the time. If not, there's a few intervals where it's not raining and it's still almost sprinkling. But my whole life is disorder. I was really priding myself on my organization. I had become quite an organized human, and now it's just chaos. Look, you see, it's coming right up to the edge. Luckily I'm on a cliff. It's incredibly loud and blowing. If it's not raining, it's blowing wind, and if I'm not lucky, it's doing both. But it's funny, I've been making a lot of videos. I didn't really make much videos of when it was really beautiful paradise weather, It's like, why did... I don't really have a mirror to look at. I mean, why is it like that? That when we... It seems like we don't make diaries usually when things are going very great and smooth, because we're enjoying the experience so much we don't want to capture it. And I guess, these poets of yore were really good at capturing their ecstasies, Walt Whitman or Keats and Yeats, or the ecstatic poets able to translate their joys into some kind of distillation of the essence of their experience. Oh my god. I don't know if you can hear me very well. Maybe I have to record these thoughts again. And I was thinking about it too, because I've been listening a lot to the recordings of Alan Watts. And Alan Watts is a very intelligent speaker. I say is because he's still talking to us if you just turn on his recordings. And these are recordings from more than 50 years ago, some of them. And maybe to some person they're boring, and this is a British guy, kind of stilted and very posh sounding nowadays. But if you really listen to what he's talking about, he makes a lot of good points about Western culture, Eastern culture, duality, about God, about Zen, about the Tao Te Ching. I mean, he talks about really pertinent things. This guy was super hip to Allen Ginsberg, and all of these topics that were really burgeoning in the 60s. And he's a philosopher, although maybe analytic philosopher student wouldn't acknowledge that, because his philosophy is easy to read, which I appreciate. Because I think this unreadable philosophy really turned me off to philosophy. I was into philosophy for my younger days. I was reading Plato's Republic when I was maybe 14 years old, 15 years old. It made me very angry, by the way. Plato's Republic pissed me off. And I couldn't finish it because I fucking didn't disagree with that bastard. Socrates. I mean, that's the thing. Like, Plato's Republic is not Socrates talking, it's Plato. And he's using Socrates. Basically, Socrates was disrupting and corrupting the youth, and he was... we could almost call him kind of anarchist. And then in Plato's Republic, he's advocating for a complete fascist state. So, as you can see, my tendencies towards anarchism were inside me before I even heard of anarchy. Because I had a natural predisposition towards my own freedom, which is why I rejected to be forced to be in school. Which is why I was always railing against society. My sister would make fun of me. My sister Caitlin would make fun of me. Always talking about society. But yeah. Fuck Plato. Pythagoras is more cool than Plato. For sure. But I don't want to talk about Pythagoras right now. I'm talking about Alan Watts. I was talking about Alan Watts because I was listening to him. A lot. Yes, okay. And now I'm getting around to the point. After like 10 parentheses deep. Let's connect them like a program in the language Lisp. So, to end the parentheses, Alan Watts, in his broadcasts and his speeches, he repeats himself. And I started to get a bit annoyed about that with him, because I wanted new stuff. But the man was a public speaker, and he was traveling around giving lectures, and people recorded those lectures. And, you know, I've been accused of this as well, going into radio mode, dandy radio. You know, when you want to get ideas out, you repeat. Repetition is really important for acquisition of information. You know, when I'm learning a song, I don't listen to it once like Mozart and remember it perfectly. I have to listen to that song maybe 50 times to get a feeling for it. And not only that, I listen to that song in different versions, so I get a full version. Like, I get the ideal version of the song somehow, or a new version in my mind, because I'm crossbreeding all of the other interpretations that I can find. And I guess the same goes with philosophy and discourse about life, is that often people will repeat themselves. I mean, Alan Watts, I start to hear this all the time. He was talking about going to some woman's bathroom, and on it there's this sign with some eyes, and in some Gothic letters it's written, "Thou God seest you." See, I don't even remember exactly what he says, because actually it should be "Thy God," but he says "Thou God." But I don't even remember exactly what he says, and I think he repeated it too much, and that's maybe part of our culture now, is that we don't really handle repetition very well. We get really bored. We want novelty, like Terence McKenna likes to talk about. Novelty. We are in a period of great novelty. I've also been listening a lot to him. So I've got these guys going in my ears. Actually, I would love to listen to some non-white man philosophers and theorists giving some discourse, because I'm getting bored. I'm getting bored of them. I'm maybe you're getting bored of me. That's okay. I mean, check out some different perspectives. Check out trans people. Check out women. Check out people that aren't from European descent. You know, there's a lot of discourse coming from all over the place. if you have any recommendations, shoot them my way, because I have a lot of time here and I can make use of it. This is repeating himself, and that's okay. And I'm saying this as a long-winded way of making notice that I also repeat myself, and that's okay. I think that the things that I repeat are the things that I find to be important, and maybe they won't be the most important things that I can say to you, but humor me at least. If you're curious to know what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, that's why I'm making these videos, and I invite you to listen and to respond. And if you have questions or comments, please gently drop them my way, and let's have civil discourse about it. Okay, I think I'm gonna have some kombucha for breakfast. I'm doing intermittent fasting, so I'm not gonna eat, but I think kombucha counts okay, because it's not sweet, it's more like vinegar. I can't. Put a mess in here. But I also notice, Izua, I also noticed something very interesting, and it's like, I have to put this, to protect from the flies, but it's getting molded, everything's moldy. Oh, just like in Hawaii, where Terrence McKenna also lived, but I never met him, of course. Intermittent fasting, it keeps the body from accumulating too much extra fats. Fat's not bad. Fat's pretty important. All of our organs need to be surrounded by fat to keep them warm. And definitely this is the time of year, the winter, or, late autumn. The bodies are accumulating fats with the purpose of survival. I think that's why so much feasts happen at this time. You've got, Dia de los Muertos, they're eating this pan de muerte, this bread of dead, the dead bread. And then we got, USA, they celebrate Thanksgiving, which, okay, like the ethics of this is in question, of course, about the way that we tell the story with the Native Americans. But we can still say that it's enjoyable to share a large meal with our families, even if the purpose originally is nationalism. Sharing a big meal at this time of year is super important. And not only that, not only just a big meal, a big calorie-dense meal with lots of sweets and cakes and pies. My grandma used to make a pumpkin pie, and she would make a sugar-free one for my grandpa. Bless his soul. He's shuffled off, and now he's everywhere. But sugar-free. If you're gonna if you want sweet, eat the sugar. But if you're going sugar-free, is chemical ones. Maybe stevia is okay. I don't know. I think that this Monsanto invented aspartame, more than 100 years ago, and it's made from coal ash. And it was argued even then that it was bad, and they banned it. And then Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, they continually petition to have their sweetener made from coal are we allowed to be ingested by humans? And you know, there's a lot of stuff like that. You know, these Rockefeller Standard Oil monopoly wanted everyone to be using petrochemicals for everything, from their clothing out of plastics to their medicines made from synthesized molecules using these petroleum stocks, to food additives, to vehicles. Kerosene was the first product. Anyway, what a genius monopolist, huh? Anyway, I'm on the Lisp programmer's parentheses tour today, and the interesting thing is about these holidays is that they're to fatten us up. And you know, Christmas, Hanukkah, these are to fatten us up. Even Ramadan, people get fat because they're intermittent fasting, but they're not doing it to lose weight. You know, they're intermittent fasting, and I did some Ramadan fasting before, both in Turkey and in Morocco. And you eat really good food at the dusk. At the end of the day, you're not fasting anymore. You eat a lot. So these holidays make people fat. But Ramadan is sliding, always, I believe it's sliding forward because it's on a lunar calendar. Every year it's going forward. And then what I think is also correspondingly funny and interesting observation is that this Christian holiday of Lent, which precedes Easter, and Easter is timed with Pesach, the Jewish holiday of of the story about being slaves in Egypt, which is it's a very beautiful story. You know, they have some powerful stories that follow the hero's journey, you know, with both Moshe and Yosef. But anyway, that's why Easter changes time, because it's following Pesach on the lunar calendar, but the Jewish calendar has an extra month which is added to keep it from moving infinitely further earlier, like with the Islamic calendar and Ramadan. But that's a side note, because we're talking about Easter, and Easter is also a kind of feast, but it can't come too early, right? Because Pesach is really linked with the harvest, and they would use Pesach to begin planting, and that's why Pesach was really important to not be too early, and that's most likely the reason why the Jewish calendar has this Adar 2, which is the second lunar month inserted after a certain many years, to ensure that the harvest, or the planting, not the harvest is Sukkot, at the end of the cycle, but Pesach has to be for planting. In the Christian church, they're celebrating Easter, but it's tied to Pesach. That's why I'm mentioning it, at least the Catholic one. I think the Orthodox Easters and Christmas are on different days. The thing that I'm mentioning about Easter is that before it, there's this other holiday, a kind of long period called Lent, which is 40 days of fasting. In a way, you give things up, and you should be a good Christian and give up your things for Lent. All right, yes, yeah, it's like kind of like Ramadan, kind of like Yom Kippur, you know, these fasting. But Lent fasting is more just don't eat meat. You eat fish on Fridays. But people usually give up something, you know, they choose it. And what I think is the most funny, to tie it all together with this feasting before the winter, is that, you know, the feasting before the winter makes sense. There's the harvest, you have all of this food, you have tables full of all kinds of delicious things, everything is like in full flow. When the time is approaching Easter and Pesach. There's not much left, you know, because it's been all winter. Especially in those days, we're not getting all these fresh things sent from all over the world. It makes sense that they had the fasting at this time, is what I'm getting at. The fasting makes sense because, well, you don't have anything to eat anyways. So it was kind of genius move that they tricked the masses into willfully, voluntarily fasting as a way to distract them from the fact that there's just nothing to eat anyway. Fasting is like willfully starving yourself, and I'm not talking about as an eating disorder, although we could say that eating disorders are kind of a self-harming fasting, where a person's fasting more than is healthy for them. I notice this a lot. When I'm deciding to be on my fast, I have a lot of willpower and I can avoid eating for a long time. But if I'm being involuntarily subjected to a fast, then, well, because it's involuntary and I'm in my heart and always have been an anarchist type thinker, I hate that. You know, I want it to be voluntary. I want to be willfully fasting. And if I'm not able to eat because of other reasons, it makes me grumpy, it makes me hangry. Yeah, intermittent fasting is a good way though to well, if you don't have a lot of food, it's a good way to preserve your food, and also it's a good way to use all of the energy of the food. Thank you for your patience, and if you made it to the end, I'm curious if you have any thoughts about what I was talking about here. If you have anything to add, you can send a message and we can discuss it further. Oh yeah. And now I'm gonna go through my day. My chaos. But I will say one thing. With all this chaos, somehow I'm getting inspiration, you know? So, cheers to that.